Bob doesn't matter as much as Bob's scope of work matters. And if we need a certain scope of work out of Bob, then Bob needs to make that scope of work happen. Bob's opinion on the scope of work is important to the execution, the ability of the execution, but it's not important to the overall company strategy.
Great experiences build great leaders. Great leaders build great teams. This is Building Great Sales Teams.
All right, guys, welcome back to Building Great Sales Teams. This is episode 299. We're almost to episode 300. I'm excited to share that experience with you guys. But today, I'm really excited because I've got a fellow sales program, sales consultant, whatever you want to call it. We're in sales, and we had a great conversation a couple months ago, and I said, I got to have you on the podcast so you can talk about your expertise in sales, leadership, recruiting, strategy. He's had a few successful exits from different businesses, and he's in his second entrepreneurial endeavor right now, which is he's the founder of a sales performance team. Nicholas, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, Doug, thank you so much for having. What a great intro that is. So cool. Love everything you're doing, and I love just your philosophy. I love what you're doing on this podcast. I love what you're doing with your clients. You're a family man. We were just talking about that in our kids, and you still smile, right? Your smile went from ear to ear when you started talking about that. So you're the real deal, and I appreciate you having me on, and love talking about sales team building. My goal is to impart wisdom on your listeners, but also learn from you and learn from them.
Heck yeah, brother. Let's get into it. So
yeah.
What are you seeing in the marketplace right now? Where are your clients falling short immediately? When you step into their business, you're like, hey, you've got to fix this.
Yeah. So a couple things, right? We do work in a couple different areas. We do work in traditional businesses, right? Main Street businesses, construction, home improvement, home services, manufacturing. That's 50 to 60% of our business. And then we're also in what we call the information marketing, the coach business, the info, bringing that to market business also. So I work in both sides of the coin. And, one is on some fronts, deals are taking longer. On the info side of the business, the coaching business, the consulting side of the business, deals are taking a little bit longer. Things are sitting in the pipeline. On the traditional side of the business, things are still moving, pretty rapidly unless it's tied to interest rates, and then it's getting slowed down. So that's what we see globally. I see a lot of good sales talent on the shore, right? Looking for a new opportunity. Either they are choosing to leave or they were exited out of their business, but they're really, really skilled. A lot of really good SaaS talent that's out there looking. A lot of good technology firms had to downsize their headcounts. So they're looking at that. So, but the real question that you asked is the most important thing I think you do and I do is we evaluate the skill set that you have on your team. I view myself like a good general manager, like a good coach of a sports team. And what's my talent pool? Where do I need to up talent? Who can I work with that's a sponge that will move by the coaching that I'm going to give them? And who do we got to get out of the locker room? Who do we got to get off the team ASAP? Because one is their performance is bringing the team down, or we're wasting leads, we're wasting time, we're wasting resources on them. And so I think the first thing we try to do is evaluate the performance of the team, look at what's going on with pipelines. Are they telling a story? Right. So when we're doing pipeline reviews, are we getting fact or fiction? Are things sitting in pipelines long? And then we just kind of go through it.
It's always interesting to see the difference between what the data says and what the salesperson says, right?
Data will set you free. And sometimes with founders too, I find, right? They buy the story and we're like, okay, I gotcha, but the data isn't telling me that. Listen, if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. But I look at the data, and that really is our guiding light. And I'm a data guy, right? listen, I grew up kind of having to track my own data in the old days on post-it notes, right? Okay, how many dials did I make? Did I do 60 before lunch? Did I do 60 after lunch? How many connects did I do? And I was taught 10-3-1, right? 10 dials, 3 connects, 1 appointment. That number is a little different nowadays, but I tracked it, and I tracked it daily, weekly, and put it in in an Excel spreadsheet. And still to this day, we do a lot of that. And then we look at the end of day reports that we make the sales team do, and it gives us good data to look at among all peers too. We kind of keep a Chinese firewall, but we could see, okay, this is what's going on with one client, and this is what's going on with another, where it allows us to kind of be a bumblebee and learn from a bunch of different ones and make good progress on that.
No, I love it. And you talked about finding that person that maybe you need to take off the team. How do you approach that conversation with founders? Because it's been uncomfortable at times, especially when it's their like they have a special relationship with that person. They've been with them for like 7 years.
Yeah. So, I think you have to respect that, right? And maybe you want to go a couple steps deep to find out why is that person underperforming, or why is their attitude changed, right? So do they have stuff going on in their personal life? Do they got stuff going on in their family life? Do they got stuff going on? Maybe, they picked up a bad habit or something's going on, right? And so the first thing we're all humans, right? We're none of us are perfect, right? There was only one perfect person. He's not with us, but he's still guiding us. And so we want to work with that, right? And we want to try to figure out that stuff. But if it's like, listen, you pay me for my advice. This is me speaking now to the founder. You pay me for my advice. You can choose to act on it, choose not to act on it. I could look at myself in the mirror because I gave you my sound advice. Here's what I'm seeing from a data perspective. Here's what I'm seeing from a performance perspective. My recommendation is that we remove XYZ off of the team for these 6 reasons, right? You got to be very, very, very pointed and very non-emotional and data-driven, I find, and let them guide to that and say, listen, this isn't an easy decision. And I want you to know that I didn't come by it in an easy, cavalier way, right? I agonized over it over the course of, my 3 months together, my 1 month together, my 4 weeks together. But sometimes you and we kind of intuitively know something as soon as we take over a team, right? Like I just took over a new client. We're 90 days in, and a week in, I knew we needed to change our team, right? And that's a difficult conversation, and you don't want to just rush to that, right? But I'm like, here's what I know is happening. We're telling stories. Yeah. And so you know it, and then you gotta let the data drive you, and then you have that conversation, but you got to have it fact-based, right? And take it from there.
Okay. So scenario, we've done our due diligence. We've removed people that need to be removed, and now we've got to replace them. Where do you find, you're going, let's just talk like high quality, right? B2B, this is somebody that is going to have experience. Where are you going right now to find these people?
Oh, man, that's a great question. I think it's different based on where you're going, right? So we got a lot through we find a lot of them through LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn ads, LinkedIn outreach, direct outreach. We find Indeed still works for us, right? Glassdoor still works for us for certain type environments. Going to people that are on the team. The other places we go to that are like our secret sauce, if you will, for certain things, if we could get away with it and we don't need a really, really seasoned person, there's a lot of phenomenal college programs that are teaching sales, right? A lot of really good talent coming out of those. And then we do a lot of work with acting sites, right? Acting job boards. Actors are great at doing scripts. Acting, they take coaching, they take direction.
I never thought about that. That makes sense. Yes, I love that.
So that's where we go, right? That's some secret sauce, man. Because you play all in. I wanted to give you the good stuff too. I didn't want to just be like the typical guy. Oh, well, you just go to Indeed, right? And it's not working, but they're just telling you that. I want your listeners to know that because I respect the community that you're building.
I appreciate you for that. No, that is very cool. I never thought about that. The actors, yeah, and that gives me some some excitement too, because my daughter and my middle son are avid actors. You know what I mean? So who knows? They may not go into acting. They may take over dad's business. So we'll see. We'll see
Well, I
how it
love it.
goes.
My first what's now called BDRs, right, or
Right.
SDRs. I called them appointment centers. I didn't know any better, right? So
Yeah.
we would hire them for my first business. We hired appointment centers, and
Hmm.
they came from we're Chicago. We were just talking about that before. I'm from Chicago, so we got the Goodman School of Theater, right, and there Roosevelt. There's like 4 different theater schools, colleges, and so we would hire our appointment setters from that. We had offices that was easy for them to get to. Back in the
Hmm.
day, they came into the office, right? And they were in cubicles just around us. And they would come in and say, I've got a part coming up and I need to practice a English accent. I'm like, I don't care, just whatever works, right? So it allows them to do what they need to do and to further their ability to find jobs, right, or to find or get gigs. And it worked out really well from us. And from there, I hired a phenomenal amount of them from appointment setters. And then from a lot of times we would get them for salespeople, and they were really, really, really good. That and the archetype of usually a athlete, right? A student athlete or an athlete really fits a good archetype. They're
Yeah.
coachable, they're driven, they got perseverance, they've got grit, they've got knocked around, right? Especially if they had to fight their way to get to starting a position, they're going to be much better than the person that just had natural talent and maybe has been coasting on his or her natural talent.
Yeah. I got a funny story about the first manager that I hired with my sales org. I actually just had him on the podcast for our 300th episode, and it
Wow.
was
Wow.
me and him started that sales org side by side, right? And he put in his expertise building greater sales teams. And I loved it so much because that was so much our relationship. We were incredibly competitive with each other, even though we were on the same team, you know. And we had come from sports backgrounds. We were
Yeah.
always athletes in high school and stuff like that. And that is definitely an underutilized archetype, like you talked about, is the individual that comes from a sports heavy background. They're going to be competitive. They're going to be driven, like all the things that you talked about. Are you deploying any personality testing when
Yeah, of
you're doing
course.
this?
Yeah, I'm really big on that. That's a great question. So we use DISC, but a specialized DISC profile for sales. So we use a DISC TTI, and then I am part of let's call it a mastermind or a group. And there's
Mhm.
also some IT that I've pulled out that IP that I use from this group.
Okay.
And so we have created 4 archetypes of salespeople, and then we had a bunch of our clients' teams take these so we could benchmark them, right? So there's
Yep.
let's call it a highly aggressive closer, maybe an
Mhm.
account executive,
Yep.
a SDR.
Yep.
There's a lot of IT, right? We do a lot of pharma, we do a lot of IT folks. So maybe a sales engineer, right, is a different terminology. So we've got 4 different personalities, and we actually have one for sales managers. And then if we're ever hiring anybody, we run their DISC profile, we run their TTI, and then we run it against that profile too.
Yeah, I
But
love
I'm
it.
a firm believer of that.
Yeah, I didn't start deploying it until probably the last few years of my sales org, and then because we were all volume, right?
Yeah,
We
yeah,
got as many people in as we could, and then our systems, our onboarding, our training, our culture systems in the beginning kind of weeded out the ones we didn't want, right? That's a lot of work, a lot of cost, a lot of headache for the trainers and stuff like that. And so towards the end, we started using Disc. And then lately, I've been heavy on predictive index. I don't know if
yeah.
you've used
PI,
that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
PI has been amazing for that. What is it called? The adventurer
Mhm.
um, archetype, and then there's aviator. I think is the other archetype that for one of my clients is just hitting it out of the park. You know what I
Right.
mean? And they've gotten to the point where they're not letting anybody in that isn't one of those. And so I've been seeing a lot of success with that. But what I love about Disc is it's built into WiseHire. You know what I mean?
Right.
So even
Yeah.
just the solopreneur can take advantage of that. It's reasonable. I think it's like $300 a month, and they can get disc with it now too. So that's one of the things that I'm recommending from like Stage and from podcasts and stuff like that for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know why people don't do it, right? And listen, we've all been had our hearts broken, right?
Yeah.
Right. The sales rep that's going to be just outstanding, and they're not, right? And so why put yourself through that heartbreak? I get enough heartbreak through other stuff, right? So use this to really drive your hiring to the next level. And not only that, I think you would agree with me, Doug, that it really allows you to have a really good coaching relationship with that rep, right? Because you know what their motivators are, you know what their pitfalls are going to be, you know where their blind spots are. And so when you're coaching them to success, that's our role, that's our responsibility as leaders, is to coach them up. You use that, right? And it's not a one and done. In my mind, I am constantly referring back to that disc. In fact, I have some clients where they liked it so much, their entire team took the disc, and then some of them are in a closed environment, an office environment. They now have their disc profile on their cubicles, right? So when you're working with each other, you know what the disc profile is. And I think
the buy-in is huge there. You never, I mean, not never, but I rarely see that from the team when I deploy like predictive inventives or disc. Yes, from the owner, the executives, absolutely, but the team's always like, mumbo jumbo, you know what I mean? Like they don't believe in it right away. It's almost like you're trying to do fortune telling with them. You know what I mean? They think it's kooky.
And I'm blanking on the name, but I'll find it, and then we could go back retrospectively and add it to the show notes. Maybe you know about it. There's a profile that there's a system you could buy that in essence will go look at your prospects LinkedIn profile and tell you what their disc profile is. So you know how to sell to your clients without, in essence, having them go through the test. I think it's called like Ask Alice or something like that. Okay. And in essence, it goes out and it scrapes the LinkedIn profile, maybe goes out, looks for some other social media. And from that, it gives you an idea of what their disc profile is.
Yeah, we definitely gotta backlink that for sure and check that out. I know, and I need to reach back out to him. He's out of Canada, but he had a software that if they submitted a video submission instead of like a resume, which is really popular right now, that AI could basically read their facial expressions and their body language and tell you what archetype of disc they were based on that video, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So awesome. Well, what do you, I guess, with sales performance team, what are you guys doing right now? What are you excited about? They've got some events coming up and stuff like that.
Yeah, we got a couple different things coming up that we're really excited about. Like you, we're doing. Thank you for putting that up. So we're doing a founder-led peer group, right? We call it Founder Iron Sharpens Iron. So we're bringing founders together, especially those that are selling, or those that are building sales team, and we've created this where they kind of get together, best practices, and work with them. And this is really a lot for technology-based founders because they're not really good sellers, right? They're great in the tech, but they don't know these tricks that you and I kind of have learned over the years. Also in the fall, we have some, I'm in Chicago, so we got to celebrate the nice weather. So in September, when it gets a little bit not as nice, we're going to be doing some workshops where we're teaching founders how to build out their own sales teams, right? So what are the processes that we go through? How do we set up the ads? How do we set up the hiring process? And then the next day, how do you build your playbook? And then how do you build your scorecard? So we're doing that in September. We'll get that to you so you could have that to your desk. Maybe we'll have you come in for a speaker. I know you like Chicago. You probably like Chicago pizza.
Give me a reason, please.
There you go. That, or we'll do some good barbecue. There's a couple hidden places. Frank Sinatra's favorite barbecue place is in Chicago. And then, and so it'll still be fall, so we could do a baseball game. But
nice.
So that's some of the stuff that we got coming up. We're launching. We've created a couple different info products about sales coaching, for the manager's perspective, because I think there's a lot of stuff for the reps, but there's not a lot of stuff, especially for first-time sales managers. And
Mhm.
I'm not as young and good looking as you, but but I got some age. But there's some things I wish I would have known when I first started out that I want to lift up not only the sales profession like you do, but the
Yeah.
sales leadership and the sales management perspective.
Yeah, and that's real, and I love that you're recognizing where the gaps are, right?
Yeah.
And so for you guys, it like you said, right now one of the places you're focusing on is technology and SaaS and things like that because, you know, nerds don't know how to sell, right?
Right.
So that's what it comes down to. And what I'm finding is, and probably more my demographic is more the trades, right? And
Yeah.
typically they're very good at their trade. They're very good at surrounding themselves with like-minded men and women that love that trade. But then when it comes to building the business or building the sales program, they've gotten by on their charm to that point. You know what I mean? And so we deploy sales programs for trades businesses a lot, which are smaller businesses and stuff like that. So now there's definitely gaps out there, and the education needs to be put out there, whether it be through my event last Friday or your events coming up or this podcast, which is
Right.
why I love bringing consultants on that are doing the same thing that I'm doing because I do like the acting thing. I never knew that, you know what I mean? And so that's really cool. So if someone is interested in those events in Chicago because it's a cool place to go to, period, and then
Right.
you
Right.
some sales program training at the same time, where do they go to for that?
So they can hit us up. It's on our website, right? We'll be adding it to our website.
Okay.
They could also get on our mailing list, and they could just go to PACK dot salesperformanceteam.com, which is the
Okay.
site that you have up. And then that will get us on their list and we'll send it out to us. We're doing a webinar. It's tomorrow. It's short term,
Yeah.
but it's for business owners, right? And it's really how can they add to the valuation of their business? And just hit up my LinkedIn. It's on there, right? They could sign up for it there. And it's really by doing what you and I do, right? That's
Yeah.
the secret sauce, and that's the driver of the valuation of any business. So I just save them 20 minutes. They don't have to get on the webinar. But if they want to learn a little bit more how to do that, they could go on that. We also do an audit, right? So I'm sure you do the same thing where we look, just an eye to look at the sales team that isn't emotionally attached to it, right? So
Yep.
somebody from the third, 3 levels out, just taking a look at it, and then I'm running it up against best practices to say,
Yeah.
okay, this is what you're doing, this is where you're falling short. Here's your top 10 list of things you need to do. We could work with you, or you could do it yourself. But at least and you had a third party validate things you're doing well, but also where do you leave things on the table?
And I love that you said that. An eye that's unemotionally, not emotionally attached. I think that's so important because so many times I come into companies and they're talking about how to build their sales programs based on who they have versus building it based on what the company needs. And this is just happening so much. And it takes a good couple weeks for me to get them to come around to like, hey, Bob doesn't matter as much as Bob's scope of work matters. You know what I
Right.
mean? And if we need a certain scope of work out of Bob, well, then Bob needs to make that scope of work happen. It, Bob's opinion on the scope of work is important to the execution, the ability of the execution, but it's not important to the overall company strategy. And I think that a lot of time is where we run into a lot of friction. I don't know about you on your end.
Yes, of course. Yes and yes, right? As they teach us in improv training. But the other thing too is, and I'm seeing it a little bit when that business owner or executive team realizes that we are ready to move to the next level, right? And we're going to do everything that we possibly can to move to the next level, because what we're doing is fine, but we're playing a little bit small, and they realize they're playing small. Then they'll be open to having those conversations of saying, love Bob, Bob's been with you forever, respect that, and we want to honor that, but realizing that we are missing 1, 2, 3
Yeah.
ABC and FGH because of that. Now, if you're okay with that, I'm fine, but I would be doing you malpractice, right? Consulting
Mhm.
malpractice if I didn't point this out. It's your business, your shop, you do what you want to do with it. But I'm telling you, this is what I see from my perspective. So,
Bottom line is we need Bob to grow. We
need Bob
need
to
Bob.
grow or grow Bob. Yeah. And then we're gonna be, we're gonna be fair with Bob, right? Because sometimes
Yeah.
Bob's been with you for 30 years and maybe he's kind of aged out, or Bobette is aged out.
Yeah.
You want to be fair with people, and you want to help them move to the next level if they can, right? But yeah, I mean, it's a shame when that happens, but you got to realize you're also not doing Bob any benefits by, kind of sugarcoating it or working around him.
100%. Couldn't agree more. All right, brother. Last question for you.
All right.
Question I ask all my guests, and it's a pivot. So sorry if it catches you off guard. What does legacy mean to you, and what legacy do you want to leave behind?
Oh gosh. So legacy is something you think about, as you get, you have children. You and I both are fathers, right? So we try to be father first, husband first. And I think if you think about legacy, I get excited that my children are productive in society, right? That means I did my job as best of I could, right? Sure, mistakes are made along the way as a parent, because there's no instruction manual that you first get. So first, husband first, right? Second is father first, and then I do love the craft of sales. I love the profession of sales. It's been very good to me, and I want to give back. And I do see, I think you and I talked a little bit about that. I do see some bad, let's call it idiosyncratic and personalities kind of creeping in, and they're going to be there. I'm just going to be a voice of difference, right? And I'm going to be a voice of respect and dignity. And the craft is something that we take pride in, and we take pride in helping others and lifting people up. And so, father first, husband first, in case my wife watches this, father second, and then legacy of lifting up the profession of sales and sales management.
I love it, brother. That's a fantastic answer. All right, you guys got the links if y'all want to reach out to Nick here and follow him, and definitely take advantage of some of the stuff that they're putting out in the marketplace. The education is unmatched, and so make sure y'all take advantage of that. Nick, appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, it's an honor. It's been a highlight of my day. I love what you're doing. I love your approach, and you're just a great guy. So I could talk sales all day with you, but I know we both got to run.
Hey, part 2 coming soon.
Part two coming soon. We'll do it in Chicago.
Oh man, you're teasing me.
I know.
I love it so much. All right, guys, let's get building.